My guest today is Tony Johnson, an international speaker and author on customer service, leadership, and sales growth. He's also the author of Together We Serve and Recipe for Service. Tony spent 20 years in the restaurant and retail spaces prior to founding Ignite Your Service training and consulting. He's an experienced multi-unit leader, customer experience officer, and master trainer. He's also a certified customer experience professional and a member of the National Speakers Association. And if I'm not mistaken, Tony and I also share something else in common. We are both Disney geeks.
Absolutely. Hey, it's great to be here.
So wonderful to have you. I'm so glad that you've taken the time to join me today. We've got a lot to talk about because we're coming out of the COVID period of people being locked up and what businesses can expect in delivering customer experience from this point forward. But before we go there, I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about how did you make this transition out of the restaurant and retail industry into speaking and customer experience?
Well, I've always had a passion for it. You know, I think I cut my teeth when I was in college studying some of the great orators, and whether you love or hate their policies, you know, the Bill Clintons and the Ted Kennedys of the world were probably some of my inspiration when, you know, I was taking that speech 101 class in college more years ago than I'm going to share. But, you know, I think I lost an account one time, and it came down to customer service. We all came in to try to save this piece of business. Too little, too late. Lost a big customer, and I vowed to learn everything I could. And this was a million years ago. And as I read and researched, I thought, you know, this is something that everyone needs to learn about. And customer experience and CX, you didn't hear about it as much as you do now, and there wasn't as much math and science behind it. And so, you know, I learned everything I could. I started doing ad hoc, you know, speaking for my company I was with at the time. And I ended up growing that over the course of time into, you know, a larger role inside of a large organization. And then from there, it just seemed like a side hustle and then, you know, a main hustle were really important to me and sharing this. So, you know, it's been a long journey, but, you know, I always believe, Ron, that if you haven't spent a year serving people in a restaurant or something like that, it should be like mandatory service, I think. I was reading an article, it must have been Monday or Tuesday, where people weren't tipping because servers were wearing masks and they were leaving mean comments on their tip cards. And they were saying, couldn't understand you through the mask, or I don't agree with your restaurant's policy, or you know how it is trying to get restarted when you've been closed for a minute, and they were leaving 0 tips. And I thought, you know, that's a crummy thing to do. And if you ever had to do that for a living like I did, you wouldn't do that. And so, you know, I think it's been a journey of taking everything that I've done over, you know, the last 20 some years and trying to teach people how to do it. And we probably all know speakers and consultants and trainers who've never done it. And you can sniff those people out a mile away. So, you know, I think that was something I wanted to do, was to share all the stuff I learned and did right and wrong to try to help folks. That's where it all came from at the beginning, was that kind of wanting to help.
Yeah, and I really feel for the people that are in the restaurant and the service industry and the event industry and in our industry. And I mean, it's just, yeah, things have been hard all the way around, but there's still no reason to disrespect individuals who are trying nothing more than to make a living and to not only take care of themselves but protect their families and others as well. So I hope more people heed the call to be a little bit nicer. So as I said at the onset, we are both kind of Disney geeks, and right now it's the end of May, really close to the end of May, and Disney just announced yesterday that they were going to go ahead and they had a phased opening. They're going to do some opening in July of 2 parks on one day and 2 more parks on another day, but they're not going to open any of the hotels at this point. At least they've not announced any of that. And so my thought is, as someone who comes from the wedding profession, and I talk to a lot of wedding professionals, and I tell them to keep an eye on what Disney is doing, because they're going to lay the template, I believe, for how venues that host parties and wedding receptions and that sort of thing, they're going to set the template for others to follow. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think, I think the nice part is, especially where I live in Central Florida, there are going to be a lot of microcosms, right? So a enterprise called Fun Spot, which is a smaller amusement park, opened up right away. So they opened up like
Right.
last week. Universal Studios and SeaWorld, I believe, are going to be opening in the next couple of weeks, and then Disney is coming after that. So I think we're going to be able to see this phased approach to see what methodologies they're employing and what
Right.
works in small scale and large scale. And I think that's going to be really interesting because, for example, there's still a lot of ambiguity with the Disney opening. As I was researching what they're going to do, and I'm an annual pass holder, have been for years. We don't know what that's going to mean because they're talking about a reservation system to get in the front gates. No one knows what that means. So just having a ticket isn't enough to guarantee park entrance. And they 4 or 5 times a year, they will reach capacity at Magic Kingdom and they won't let anybody in. But that's like New Year's Day, Christmas
Right.
Day,
Right.
4th of July. This is an everyday adventure where you get up and probably will have to get on some kind of system and see if you can get in that day. And for folks like me and my wife who literally get up on a Saturday morning and just decide we're going, I don't know what that's going to mean. And people who love to park hop and go to other parks, or and they haven't necessarily canceled all the reservations. Some of them, I think, they're leaving in force, but they're not taking any new ticket sales or hotel reservations.
Mm.
So if you have a reservation and you show up, will you be guaranteed park entrance, or will you have to get into the big lottery too? To spend $500 a night on a hotel room and not be able to walk over to Epcot, that can be kind of a bummer if you have to get in that big lottery. So I think their communication right now, I'm not sure that they had enough detail actually. So that would be, I think, a tip and a learning is if you're going to plant your flag on something, right, and say this is the dates we're opening. If you have rabid fans, and I think rabid fans like Chick-fil-A, Disney, Raising Cane's, those folks have fans that would run through fire for them.
Right.
You need to make sure you know exactly what you're talking about. You need to make sure you get all the detail because there are more questions than answers at this point. And so I think their announcement was premature and they don't usually get it wrong. But I think in this case, they may have actually, I don't know, jumped the gun and not had enough significant information. So I think that's a key learning every business can learn from right now based on what they're doing.
Right. Yeah, and because trickle down doesn't really do the trick. You're going to have to come up with something solid and stand behind it. And as we were talking before, we came on air this morning. We were talking about how one of Disney's foremost customer service processes is safety. That's their number one thing. So everything they do is going right now. That particular process is going to get the most exposure as far as making sure that people that are coming through the gates are healthy, doing the temperature checks. I'm not really sure how they're going to do that in Central Florida, but I'm assuming that they're going to, it's Disney for crying out loud. They're going to come up with a way to make sure that everyone that's coming through that gate, or the majority of the people coming through that gate, are at least not going to expose others to a health hazard.
And it'll be interesting to see because, the way they always explain it, they look at safety, courtesy, show, and efficiency at
Mm.
Disney, like we were talking about. And they always craft it as, guests will forgive a breakdown in efficiency if you preserve the show. They'll forgive a breakdown in the show if you preserve courtesy, but they'll never, ever forgive a breakdown in safety. And so this is going to test that mantra of theirs. This, is safety more important than courtesy, show, and it used to be called productivity with them.
Right.
So, they're a for-profit organization. So, will safety and courtesy truly trump, profit and efficiency? The time will tell, and I think the world's going to be watching.
So that brings up an interesting question because you were talking about restaurants a few moments ago and how the servers are wearing masks. A lot of businesses now are going to require. Actually, they already are. A lot of businesses are already requiring customers to wear a mask. The businesses that are coming back online, though, that haven't been considered essential businesses, what suggestions might you offer a business that's saying, okay, so how do we approach this? Because we're going to be asking our customers to wear masks when they come in. We're going to make sure that our employees are in masks. We're going to have additional hand washing stations, or we're going to have places where they can get the stuff for their hands. How do you suggest businesses approach that?
Well, I think you have to communicate without over communicating. So I think this very iconic graphic piece, the floor decals for distancing,
Right.
I wouldn't use 100 words on a sign when you can do it with an icon or a picture. The other thing is if you're going to require a mask and if you can afford it inside of your budget, I'd offer the mask, right? I would have
I
disposable
agree.
masks available for those who forgot, so you don't have to turn anybody away. I was at a we braved out to the beaches in Florida a few weeks ago with some friends who came out. Their state had stopped quarantining. They were able to travel again, and we went over to the Tampa area. And my friend walked across the street. He wanted a big hat, right? Because it ended up being really sunny. It was a gorgeous day on the beach, 95 degrees. But he wanted a hat. He wouldn't get access to that store. They wouldn't let him in because he didn't have a mask and they weren't offering them. Now this guy had money in his pocket, and he ended up walking back to the gift shop in the hotel and buying a hotel, hat for $30, right? This guy would have spent like $50 on a really nice, like big Florida hat, right?
Right.
But they lost that sale because they didn't offer a $1 disposable mask, right? So you look at that return on investment. The other thing, the third piece I would say, so we got the clear communication,
Right.
and also if you're going to have hand sanitizer, don't run out of hand sanitizer, right? If you go up and put your hand under there, something needs to come out. I would offer masks if it makes sense inside of your model. And then the third piece, really has to be around thinking about how your teams are going to emote and communicate. So it's tough through a mask. I was over at the local Publix, which is a grocery store chain here in Florida. I love them, but right, the service hasn't been quite the same because people can't emote through those masks. It's harder to hear. You can't see their facial expressions. And I've seen some beginnings of those masks that have a cutout in the front and you can actually see through them and clear. I think those are going to be the future, right? So that you can actually see somebody smile and you can actually read their lips, because people who are hard of hearing, and actually human beings in general, actually read lips more often than people think to communicate. You don't hear as much as you think. You connect the dots because you see somebody's lip moving, which is why it's easier to look at someone on a Skype than it is to hear them on the telephone. You don't hear them any better. You can just see their mouth moving. I think those clear, open, where they just got that little box in the front is going to be a huge trade, especially in guest facing kind of B2C operations out there. So those would be the three things that I would give advice on.
Those are great ideas. And I'm of the belief that, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. Yes, you can't see a smile from under the mask, but I think a lot of times you can see it in somebody's eyes,
Absolutely.
when they make that smile. That's why I tell my clients, smile as big as you possibly can. Or as a friend of mine says, smile as loud as you can, because your eyes will brighten up and they will
Yep.
be able to see that expression. My wife and I, same thing happened with us. We went shopping not long ago, and we both wear masks when we go out. And we were in Walmart, and somebody helped us find a product that we were looking for that we thought they were out of. At any rate, when the customer service rep came out with the piece of merchandise, I took it and I told him I'm wearing the mask. I said, believe it or not, I am smiling really big.
Right.
I want you to know I'm smiling under this mask, because I don't want you to think I'm just taking advantage of the fact that you were so nice to me. So sometimes you just have to communicate it. So one of the things that I've been considering is that I think, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think that coming out of this, customer expectations are going to be higher than they've ever been before. And the reason I say that is because during the pandemic, during the lockdown, restaurants, grocery stores, delivery services, all of these businesses were bending over backwards to accommodate customers in ways they've never accommodated customers before. And I think in a way, and I hate to use the word spoiled, but I think in a way, the expectation is that more when customers go into businesses now that are opening up, they're going to expect that same level of experience of do for me more than what you've done in the past.
Yeah, I think you're right. And there's a couple of things. First, I think we have, customer service has taken on a more automated feel, a lot of AI, a lot of self-service. So
Right.
I think that's not going anywhere. We probably accelerated a few years in the future on that. The future of remote work for employees, obviously you can't put that back in the bottle. People who, old guys and folks who, didn't think it would work have realized, oh my gosh, people can work. And I've been a remote employee for a very long time, and then even before moving into what I'm doing now, I was very remote. The other thing too is silly policies, and I'm going to pick on the airlines here for a minute. And I'm on the road 30 weeks a year, at least when I'm in business. Traveling all over, speaking and
Right.
consulting and training. And I've paid a lot of airline fees in my life. Every time you make a ticket change, it's $200 plus the difference in the ticket, right? I think it's the most ridiculous policy out there in modern history. And I think we have seen airlines waive that fee over the last 2 months because of all of this. How do you put that genie back in the bottle? And it's a big part of their revenue that, because basically it's 200 free dollars, right? It doesn't cost
Yeah.
them any money to change that ticket, but it's 200 free bucks. I feel like they're like Scrooge McDuck diving in that big old vault of coins. And I know the airline business is tough and I know that they struggle, but I think, or some do, but when I see the fact that they're finding a way to make that work with that flexibility, I don't know how you go back. And so that's going to be one of the biggest things people are going to have to address with hotels. And some hotels are better than others, right? If you go to,
Right.
you come down to Orlando, there are pretty good cancellation fees in the hotels here. You go to Vegas, it's the same thing. You go to New York Times Square, you don't cancel that hotel 72 to 96 hours in advance. They're cooking you for the whole stay. And that's just their model, right? So
Right.
when we think about what businesses are going to have to do with these accommodations that people have become more and more used to, I just don't know that you put that level or that level of service in terms of, I've got questions, I need personalized attention. People are going, taking more time to go over what people might need and how to get there and offering them advice and counsel. People get used to stuff very, very quickly.
Right. Well, and I'm of the belief that you should make it so easy for people to do business with you that it would be extremely difficult for them to take their business someplace else. Be as accommodating as you possibly can, and also I'm of the belief of always trying to do what is in the best interest of the customer. And right now, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of businesses that are failing on that side of providing the empathy that customers need right now. We're all in a situation where we're hurting. There's no doubt about that. I believe we're all feeling a little bit of anxiety. And so customers are no different than the rest of us. So sometimes it doesn't mean that you have to give away the farm, but a lot of times it's a matter of just listening to the customer to find out in what ways you might be able to help them, that will be a benefit to both the business and to the customer themselves.
Right.
So going back to the airlines for a few moments. Southwest Airlines. My experience with Southwest Airlines, you were talking about other airlines that are taking the fees. Southwest Airlines does not collect a change fee. And when the lockdown came, I had some reward travel build up that was going to expire within a couple of weeks of when we were all locked down. So I reached out to them. I give them a lot of credit, because what they actually did was they extended all the reward miles that people had that were about to expire, I think all the way through the end of June of this year. They're going to be extended towards the end of this year. So that's just another way of showing a little empathy and understanding. Not everybody's wanting to get on an airplane at this time. So
Well, and I can echo that to some extent to give the airlines a little bit of credit. I'm pretty monogamous, right, with my airlines. So I'm a lot of American Airlines, a
right.
lot of Hilton, and a lot of Avis when I'm on the road. And so when I'm out there with them, I've got some loyalty built up. And when you got to get on an airplane almost every week, the little things you get, some executive platinum on American, which means I get a lot of upgrades. I get to get on earlier. Double miles, that kind of nonsense. And I also have some memberships into some of those clubs, right? Like the Admirals Club and the Delta Sky Club. To their credit, all of them extended their membership. So American and Delta extended their club memberships. I haven't been on an airplane in close to 3 months now. And, they have extended my membership an extra 6 months from the time that they were going to reopen. So that's super nice. The second part is, the hotel Hilton. They extended my diamond status all the way through 2021, as did Delta and American with my loyalty status. So even if I don't get on an airplane or stay another night or rent another car, everybody I do business with, Hilton, Avis, Delta, American, has extended my loyalty all the way through 2021. And that's great, because I probably won't hit the same level. I'd already hit like diamond with Hilton, but I wasn't going to make the airline thing. You got to get to my status, you've got to pretty much be on a plane like, every week or every other week and have multiple segments. I wasn't going to get there. And those little perks make a big difference when you're getting on a plane at 6 a.m, you're getting on a plane at 10:30 at night, and you got a long flight. Those little things make a big difference to me. And so when I got those notes last month that they were going to extend all of those, like my wife had to come in and see what was going on in my office, because I actually audibly cheered. that they did that. And I actually mentioned it on my podcast and in a few of the articles that I've written recently, that I think those loyalty programs, which are so important to businesses and to consumers, I think it was great that they took the time to extend those. And that meant a lot to me personally and professionally.
Yeah, and I think again goes back to anytime you can do something that's going to be a benefit to the customer, I would say suggest that you go ahead and do it. Make it easy for them to do business with them. So I want to talk a little bit about culture, company culture right now, because one of the as employees come back to work and they get re-engaged with customers, there has to be a certain amount of trickle down from upper management as far as how we're going to progress, how we're going to proceed from this point to welcome our customers back. What can we do to extend the hand that we've never extended before? And I've been looking at businesses that are going the extra mile to be able to do things like that. Just examples though, I mean, and some of this has been happening during the pandemic, would be like the grocery stores and some of the retail stores or box stores doing things for older customers where they open up a little bit earlier during the day and invite seniors to come in. My wife and I take advantage of that. There are where I've also seen at Chick-fil-A that they've expedited their drive-through policy, so they're getting people through much faster than what they've ever gotten them through before. And actually, I've seen people actually bringing food out to the people in line so they can actually go around in those situations where they don't have to wait until their turn to actually get up to the line. Have you seen any of this in any of the businesses you've been working with?
Well, I think there's two questions in there, right? So the first is around employees and how they're bringing people back, like businesses. I think it's going to be interesting to watch because there's two pieces, right? There's the remote employees who have been working remotely and they're getting ready to come back to work, maybe or maybe not. First of all, I would say if you can keep your team remote and still find a way to bring them together every now and again, work virtually, if you can save a little bit on your real estate costs. And I actually was working with a potential client down here that does some mortgage lending and some financial services. He realized that his whole team could work remotely. He bought them all laptops and he didn't sign his lease, right? So he has no physical office space whatsoever. But, that's not for everybody because, you can't run a Best Buy or a Chick-fil-A from your house,
Right.
So if you can do that, I think you should, because there's a lot of great statistics out there around productivity, employee morale. If you do it right, there's stuff you have to do to make remote work. But if you can do it, if you're bringing people back in from a remote work because it's time, or you're going to bring them back in on a flex schedule, then I think you need to make sure you re-indoctrinate them into what it means to be in your culture. And if you're reopening a store and you've had people laid off or furloughed, there's a two-step process. One, you got to wrap your arms around them, because if you furloughed or laid off some people and not others, there's going to be angst, there's going to be jealousy, there's going to be anger, there's going to be anxiety. You've got to first cut through that clutter and hear them. They may need to rage, they may need to cry, they may need to say, do you really value me? So there's a lot of emotion that you're going to have to cut through. Once you get through that, then you're going to have to make sure that you almost treat it like you're kind of reopening or opening for the first time. So making sure you lay your flag down on what it means to serve people. What are your policies? Refresh your service skills, refresh your actual skills. I spend a lot of time in restaurants. If cooks don't cook and use a knife, that stuff can fall out of your head in a minute. So you got to make sure everyone still knows how to make the food or serve the customer or use the cash register.
Right.
And what are those expectations? And then I think the one place I will tell you that I have seen do a really nice job with the takeout piece has been Chick-fil-A. And I live in a place where Chick-fil-A is so popular, the drive-thrus have 4 lines. And literally imagine 2 drive-through carousels that people go through, and the food actually comes out in a conveyor over and down the traffic to the kiosk, the main restaurant. That's how popular Chick-fil-A is in the Central Florida area. And there's one I go to a lot in Lakeland that has, again, 4. You come in and there's like 6 wide that funnels you down to 4 wide that funnels you down to 2. But again, that second one, they're running your food on a conveyor over and down. That's how popular Chick-fil-A is. And they've done a great job leveraging their curbside pickup, their app, and also their drive-through when their lobbies were closed.
So is this conveyor new? Is this something that they put in?
I'd never seen it till I moved down here. I lived in Ohio for many years, and I never saw it in any of the ones that I went to up in the north. But when I moved down here, there was one. I can tell you it's on Florida Avenue in Lakeland, Florida, and I end up at that one a lot because I do a lot of work at the Lakeland Airport, and I stop at that Chick-fil-A a lot. It is a monster operation.
I've not seen
Crazy.
the conveyor. That is crazy. Well, and that brings me to my final point is one of the things I believe is that this to me there's not going to be if people are waiting for a new normal, it's not going to happen.
Right, it just is. It's just gonna be. You know, I wish we could throw that phrase "new normal." That's gonna go on the punch card. If you've ever worked in a big company, there's these idioms, right? You know, whether it's leverage or whether it's delta or
pivot.
You know, I'm sorry, pivot. Sure, we all have these corporate anachronisms and gobbledygook. And anyone who's ever worked for a big company has done the vernacular bingo, right? Where whatever word
right.
you're watching people use, new normal is definitely going on everybody's scorecard.
And and that's unfortunate because my thinking on it is, and I wrote an article about this not long ago, but if you're waiting for a new normal, it's not going to happen. And if you're waiting on a new normal, if you're waiting on anything with the word normal in it, then you're being complacent, and your chances are you're not going to be ready for the next disruption that we have in business and life instead of being proactive. I believe that this is creating something of a business renaissance because it gives people an opportunity. I was talking a moment ago about how I believe that customers their expectations are going to be higher, but I also think that they're going to be more forgiving because this is an opportunity. They're experiencing the same things we are, like with technology, the same mistakes, the same faux pas, all of that stuff. So this is a great opportunity for businesses to try new things, to experiment, to take risks, to step,
Sure.
and I hate another idiom, step out of your comfort zone and try new things, because the worst that can happen is you make a mistake and you learn from it and you go back and you improve it and you try again. And who knows,
Yeah.
it may draw even more customers.
Yeah, I mean, failing fast, right? I mean, this is the time to fail fast. I think there's going to be a dichotomy. In my last article I wrote, I talked about the two kinds of customers people are going to encounter, right? The first is going to be those that want to flip the switch and go right back to normal. And there are going to be way more of those than people think. Customers and people in general are resilient. If you look at the beaches in Florida, or if you saw any of that stuff on the news on Monday or Tuesday after
The
the Labor
Ozarks,
Day,
not far from here, yeah.
I think it was one of the Ozarks too, where like the pool was just packed with people. All of those people, you would never know that there was just this big thing, right, that had happened out there in the world. So I think some people just snap back really, really quickly. And whether it's employees or your customers, they're just going to walk back in like it was yesterday. And then there are going to be the fraidy cats. There are going to be the folks who are anxious, and when I say fraidy cat, I don't mean that in a mean way, right? I'm talking about the people who are legitimately anxious and uncertain. Maybe they lost their jobs. Maybe they lost a loved one. Maybe this just freaked them out. My wife and I were talking, when we were locked down, and it was a nice place to be locked down in Central Florida when it was 85 the whole time, right? So there are worse places to be locked down. But the thing that she said is, she's like, I feel like I'm 15 minutes away from becoming agoraphobic, because it was literally me and her and some very close family that we interacted with. And that was kind of it, right? The most social interaction I had was with the guy who rang me up at Publix. So, I could see how easily you could become trepidatious with going back out, especially if you were relying on a lot of Grubhub, a lot of delivery service for groceries. You may not have stepped out of your house for weeks at a time. And I could see that being something that would totally change your psyche and how you interact with people. So, I think there's going to be a piece around these social skills that are going to be different, and social cues. So the very best businesses are going to work through empathy and through an individual style of service, that situational service we're all striving for. And if you can do that, then you can kind of gauge those folks as they walk in, because there's a certain body language and a certain swagger and a certain reservedness to customers that employees are going to have to be really good at picking up on, and then giving them that style of customized service that person's going to need. Because more than ever, I think you're going to see, again, a dissection of different personas and different customer sets inside of a business. And it's going to be empathy, right? Empathy, kindness, hospitality, and situational service will serve every business well.
So it's good to know you made a new best friend at Publix while you were, down
I made a lot of best friends at Publix, and I was, developing a really good friendship with the Grubhub guy, right? So
Well, my problem is my wife, we aren't the free, we're not the freedy cats totally, but we do go, we wear, when we go out, we wear the mask. I
sure,
mean,
we do too, right? And because it's not
and
for, I was kind of being that cavalier, kind of cowboy, but somebody told me it's not for you, it's for the, you know what I mean? And
exactly.
when you say it like that, that hits me, right in the heart, when you tell me that. So I'll go out and take more chances with myself than I ever would with the senior behind me. And when someone explained it to me like that, I got a sister-in-law who's in the medical field, and she said, dude, it's not for you. Come on.
Yeah.
You're not young, but you're not old, and you're healthy, and it's not you. It's not for you. It's for the other guy. Just remember that. And
Yeah.
that got me. So.
And then and I wish more people would consider that, but it is what it is. And it as you said, it's going to get interesting over the next few months to see exactly what lies ahead. I just hope that we don't find ourselves back in this same situation again. So Tony, it's been awesome speaking with you. This has been a great conversation, and you've given me some insight of things that I'd never even thought of as well. And before we go though, I want to ask, do you have any parting words? I mean, do you have any any epiphany of what lies ahead that you'd like to share?
I just think this has grounded everybody with how important service is, and how important our restaurants, our retail, our community gathering touchstones, whether it's Disney or whether it's Fun Spot America, or whether it's SeaWorld, or whether it's Chick-fil-A. I think we've really learned how important people are to people and how much we miss them. So I would just tell everybody, whether you're dealing with team members, whether you're dealing with the server at the restaurant, whether you're serving a guest or a customer, start with kindness. I don't think you can go wrong with keeping people safe and being nice. And when people look at me when I talk like that and say, gosh, that's a pretty simple philosophy, I'm thinking, if you keep people safe and you treat them well, that is going to absolutely be, I think, the kicker to getting people to want to come back. And that's sales growth, right? So
Right.
all these soft skills we're talking about, when I talk about treating people well and situational service and making things easy, listen, it's the right thing to do, no doubt, but I'm not doing this, for people for free, right? I want people to do this so that they can grow and win and have businesses that thrive. And the only way you can do that is by giving people something they need and doing it well and doing it safely, so that people want to come and spend money with you. Most people who are going to listen to this probably aren't doing it for fun, right? And they're probably not doing it, unless you're a nonprofit, in which case the same skills apply. But you have a mission, or you're trying to grow your sales. Either way, these things translate into real life results. And that's what I always like to let people know is, people love to downplay the soft skills, right? But when organizations cut training and they
Right.
cut service skills and they cut all these soft skills, they see their sales slump. They may cut their way to prosperity for 15 minutes, but ultimately great service, great leadership, and this kindness and safety, that's how organizations grow. So I think that's probably the last word I would want to say, Ron, is if you are a big organization, think twice before you cut your training and before you cut your customer service department, because they are more important right now than you think.
Absolutely. So Tony, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you to talk to you more about speaking or your consulting, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
Sure, they can go to igniteyourservice.com or email me at tony@igniteyourservice.com. Ron, I believe we are in the middle of the great service comeback. You call it the service or the business revolution. I think the great service comeback is going to be something we look back and go, oh my gosh, this is when organizations got out there and owned it. I want everybody to win the great service comeback. So if you go again to igniteyourservice.com/comeback, we can start the conversation. And just so you know, right now, I'm actually offering a free 45-minute consultation to start talking about this growth and how you can move forward. I promise you there'll be value on there, and then we can talk about what's next. You can sign up for it right there on my website. So that would be my shameless plug.
And buy your books. You didn't mention your books.
Oh yeah, and if Together We Serve is available on Amazon, so it's on audiobook, it's on ebook, or if you still like a good old-fashioned paperback, you can get it there as well, all right there. But it's on audiobook on Audible, and you can order it directly on Amazon. If you search Together We Serve Tony Johnson, you will find my latest book.
So did you do your own audio for the audiobook?
I did. I didn't think anyone could read it as well as me. And so I actually read my own audiobook. I'm not sure I would ever do that again because boy, was it a labor of love to get through that. But it was great. And again, I just don't, well, the first audiobook I listened to was Jack Welch's Winning, right? It's a great book. Some old school stuff in there, but some really great things. And Jack Welch read his own book. And John Maxwell always reads his own books. And every time I listen to it, I think, you know what? I'm listening to the person who read that book. And I think there's something special about that. It shows commitment. So that's why I did it.
See, I want to be wealthy enough to get James Earl Jones to do it. So I mean, I don't know. There's just something about.
Listen, if Darth Vader's going to read your book for you, or Mufasa, I think there's no better voice.
Yeah, either way.
Or Morgan Freeman, right? That'd be the other one.
Yeah. All right. Well, Tony, again, thank you so much for joining me. For those of you watching, if you would like to reach out to me, it's ron@ronruth.com. And thank you so much for taking the time to join Tony and I today. And I will see you shortly. So come back to my website and we'll talk again.
Thank you.